It wasn't a whisper or a bad dream. It was a scream. The kind of raw, primal scream that rips a parent from the deepest sleep and shoots ice-cold adrenaline straight to your heart. For the past week, this had become our nightly ritual. My 4-year-old son, Leo, would wake up from a dead sleep, his little body stiff with terror. He'd point a trembling finger at the darkest corner of his room and scream a single, impossible word. Santa. I'm writing this with hands that won't stop shaking, sitting in the dim glow of my laptop screen. The sun is still hours away, and I don't dare turn on any other lights. I have to get this down. I need someone, anyone, to know that I'm not crazy, even though every rational part of my brain is screaming that I have to be. It started with my son, but it's not about him anymore. It found me, and I'm so afraid. It all began so innocently. The Christmas season was settling over our quiet suburban neighbourhood like a gentle blanket of snow. Lights twinkled on every house, inflatable snowmen waved from frozen lawns, and the air smelled like pine and cinnamon. Leo was completely swept up in the magic. His every waking moment was about elves, reindeer, and of course, the big man himself, Santa Claus. We read The Night Before Christmas until the pages went soft. We must have rewritten his letter a dozen times. His crayon-scrawled list, a testament to his pure belief. He was just a little beacon of Christmas joy. That's why the screaming felt so wrong. The first time it happened, I stumbled into his room, my heart hammering, expecting to find him sick or hurt. But he was just sitting bolt upright in his bed. His eyes were wide with a fear I'd never seen before, staring at the corner where his rocking chair sat draped in shadow. He was here, Mommy, he sobbed, burying his face in my shoulder. Santa was here. I held him tight, stroked his hair, and murmured all the soothing things a mother is supposed to say. Oh, sweetie, you just had a bad dream. Santa's at the North Pole. He's very busy getting ready. He just shook his head against my chest. No, he was right there. He was watching me. The next night, it happened again. And the night after. The routine was always the same. A blood-curdling scream between 2 and 3 in the morning, me rushing to his side. And his terrified insistence that Santa had been in his room. My husband Tom could sleep through a hurricane. He'd stir, mumble something about just bad dreams, and roll right back over, trusting me to handle it. And I tried. I really did. I explained that dreams can feel very, very real. I told him that with Christmas so close, it was only natural that Santa was on his mind. I even tried telling him how lucky he was that Santa was checking in on him. That was a huge mistake. He's not nice, Mommy, Leo whispered, his voice trembling. His smile is too big. A chill that had nothing to do with the winter air snaked down my spine. A smile too big. It was such a strange, specific detail for a 4-year-old to just invent. Still, I clung to logic. He'd seen dozens of Santas by now. On TV, in books, at the mall, maybe one had a weird grin, and his dreaming mind twisted it into something monstrous. Kids have vivid imaginations. I told myself that over and over, like a mantra. But the nights wore on, and Leo's fear didn't just linger. It got worse. He started fighting sleep. He'd scan the shadows in his room, his eyes darting back and forth as I tucked him in. My joyful, Christmas-obsessed little boy was being replaced by a pale, haunted child with dark circles under his eyes. He stopped talking about sleigh bells and started muttering about long fingers. He said the reindeer weren't on the roof. They were scratching at his window. My patience started to fray. I was exhausted, running on caffeine and fumes, and my own nerves were shot. Something had to give. I had to prove to him that there was nothing there. The idea hit me one morning while I was watching Leo listlessly push cereal around his bowl. He looked so fragile. I had to give him his security back. That's when I thought of it. "Hey, buddy," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "I have a super secret idea. How would you like to set up a Santa detector?" His eyes flickered with a tiny spark of interest. "A detector?" "Yep, a special camera. We'll put it in your room, and it'll watch over you all night. If anyone, and I mean anyone, tries to sneak in, we'll catch them on video, red-handed." I framed it as a fun spy mission. We were a team. He was the chief officer in charge of monitoring for unauthorized Santas. A small smile touched his lips for the first time in days, and that was all the encouragement I needed. That afternoon, I bought a simple Wi-Fi security camera, the kind you use as a baby monitor. Standing in the electronics aisle, I had to laugh at myself. Buying surveillance equipment to debunk my 4-year-old's delusions about a malevolent Saint Nick. It was insane. And yet, as I paid, I couldn't shake a tiny sliver of unease. That evening, Leo and I set it up together. He chose the spot, on his bookshelf, opposite his bed. It had a perfect view of the entire room, including the rocking chair in the corner. We downloaded the app to my phone and waved at the little lens. He seemed empowered, his fear briefly replaced by a sense of control. "Now we'll see him," he said, his voice a mix of fear and excitement. "Now we'll see that there's nothing there, sweetie," I corrected gently. That night, I lay in bed with the app open on my phone, the small grey-scale image of my son's room glowing on the nightstand. I watched him toss and turn before finally settling down. I stared at the feed for what felt like hours, tracing the familiar shapes in the dark. It was just a room, a quiet, still, empty room. Eventually, my own exhaustion won, and I drifted off, feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe this would finally break the spell. The next 2 nights were peaceful, blissfully, miraculously peaceful. Leo slept straight through, no screams, no tears. I started to relax. The tension coiled in my shoulders began to unwind. It was working. The camera was the placebo he needed. I felt a rush of relief so profound it was almost dizzying. Tom clapped me on the shoulder and called me Dr. Mom. We were getting our little boy back. The nightmare was over. Or so I thought. It was the 4th night of the camera's watch. I hadn't even bothered to keep the app open. The problem was solved. I was deep in the first truly restful sleep I'd had in a month when a soft chime from my phone pulled me awake. A notification. Motion detected in Leo's room. My first thought was annoyance. The sensitivity must be too high. A dust mote, maybe. Or Leo was just rolling over. I rolled over myself, ready to ignore it, but something held me back. A cold, prickling sensation on the back of my neck. "Just check," a voice in my head urged. "Just look." With a heavy sigh, I reached for my phone. I unlocked the screen and opened the app. The live feed blinked into view. Everything looked normal. There was Leo, a small lump under his comforter, fast asleep. The room was still. I squinted at the grainy infrared image, about to close the app, when I saw it. It wasn't in the corner with the rocking chair. It was closer, much closer. Huddled in the space between the end of Leo's bed and the wall. At first, it was just a shape, a distortion in the darkness that didn't belong. Long and angular, folded into the shadows in a way that seemed wrong. I held my breath, my knuckles white on the phone. My mind scrambled for an explanation. A trick of the light, a pile of laundry, anything. Then it moved. It unfolded. Not a sudden movement, but a slow, deliberate uncoiling, like a spider. It rose from its crouch, its form becoming clearer in the ghostly black and white. It was tall, impossibly tall and thin, its limbs stretched like warped branches. It was pale, a stark, sickly white against the grey room. It wore no clothes that I could see, just a skeletal frame covered in tight, smooth skin. It took a silent step towards Leo's bed, and I saw its hands. The fingers were long, too long. They ended in what looked like dirty, jagged talons. A gasp caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to run into his room, to snatch him from his bed. But I was frozen, paralyzed by a terror so absolute it felt like a physical weight pressing me down. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was watch the tiny, horrifying movie playing out on my phone. The creature stood over my son's bed for a long moment, perfectly still, and then slowly, it lowered its head. Its face came into view for the first time. It was a blank, featureless canvas, except for two things. Two large, dark, empty sockets where eyes should have been, and a mouth, a thin black line that suddenly, grotesquely stretched. It split its face in half, pulling back into a wide, silent grin of pure malice. Leo's words echoed in my mind. His smile is too big. This was it. This was his Santa. Not a bad dream, but a real physical thing of absolute nightmare fuel, standing over my sleeping son. My heart felt like it was going to explode, and then the worst possible thing happened. As if it could feel me watching, as if it could sense my terror through the Wi-Fi signal, the creature stopped looking at Leo. With a slow, fluid motion, it turned its head. It tilted its face up, and the black voids of its eyes found the small, blinking red light of the camera. The grin widened, if that was even possible. It was looking right at me. Through the lens, through the screen, through the darkness of my own bedroom. It saw me. And in that moment, I felt a terrifying, silent acknowledgement. It knew I was watching. The game had changed. It wasn't interested in the sleeping child anymore. It was interested in me. I threw the phone onto the mattress as if it were on fire. The image burned onto the inside of my eyelids. The pale skin, the long limbs, the black eyes, and that smile. That awful, awful smile. I lay there rigid, listening for a sound from my son's room. A scream, a footstep, anything. But there was only silence. A heavy silence that was somehow more terrifying than any noise. After what felt like an eternity, I forced my shaking hands to pick up the phone again. The room was empty. The creature was gone. And Leo was still fast asleep. For the first time in weeks, he slept through the entire night. The next morning, Leo woke up a different kid. Bright, cheerful, full of energy. He didn't mention Santa. He didn't glance nervously at the corners of his room. It was like a great weight had been lifted from him. He was free. But my relief was a cold, hollow thing because I knew the truth. The burden hadn't vanished. It had just been transferred to me. I saved the video, a tiny 3 megabyte file of pure horror. I've watched it only once more, in the harsh light of day, just to prove I hadn't lost my mind. It was real, grainy and dark, but undeniable. The unfolding shape, the skeletal frame, the turn of the head, the eye contact. It was all there. I thought about showing it to Tom, but what would I say? Honey, you know those bad dreams Leo was having? Turns out he was being visited by a 7-foot-tall monster, and here's the blurry video to prove it. He'd think I was crazy. He'd have me committed. I was completely alone in this. It started subtly. A persistent feeling of being watched. The kind of feeling that makes the hair on your arms stand up. I'd be washing dishes and catch a flicker of movement in my peripheral vision. But when I'd turn, nothing. I'd be in the basement and hear a floorboard creak upstairs, even though the house was empty. Then came the nightmares. Vivid, hyper-realistic, and always the same. I was in my bed, paralyzed, unable to move or scream, and the creature from the video would be in the room with me. Sometimes it would just stand in the doorway, a tall, spindly silhouette. Other times, it would be at the foot of my bed, just like with Leo, its head tilted, that terrible grin stretched across its face. It never touched me. It just watched me with those black pits for eyes, and I would be consumed by a fear so potent it felt like it was dissolving me from the inside out. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart racing, the silence of my own room feeling more menacing than the dream itself. I stopped sleeping. How could I? Sleep was no longer a refuge. It was a guaranteed appointment with that thing. I'd lie awake for hours, staring into the dark, listening to every creak of the house. I lost weight. My hands developed a permanent tremor. Tom grew concerned, suggesting I see a doctor. I just blamed it on stress, an empty, ironic excuse. I was living in a secret, personal hell, and I couldn't tell a soul. The phenomena began to bleed into my waking hours. It was getting bolder. One afternoon I heard it, a faint scratching. It was coming from inside the wall, right behind my head. Scritch, scrape, scritch, like long nails dragging slowly across drywall. I froze, pressing my ear against the cool paint, and the sound immediately stopped. Another time I woke up to a strange, musty smell, like damp earth and decay, thick in the air around me. It was gone as quickly as it came. The encounters grew more direct. One night, I woke to a pressure on the end of the bed, the mattress dipping as if something heavy was sitting on it. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears leaking out, praying for it to be my imagination. The pressure remained for what felt like an hour, an unmoving, malevolent presence pinning me in place with sheer terror. When the first hints of dawn broke, the pressure lifted. I was alone again. I was becoming a ghost in my own home, moving through my days in a fog of fear. Every shadow held a threat. Every noise made my heart pound. The worst incident happened last week. I had finally drifted off, only to be jolted awake by a feeling of intense cold. I opened my eyes, and it was right there, not in the doorway, not at the foot of the bed. It was standing right beside me, leaning over me. Its face was inches from mine. I could see the texture of its pale skin, like stretched parchment. I could see the blackness in its eye sockets, voids that seemed to drink the light from the room, and its smile was wider than ever. For the first time, I felt its breath on my cheek. It was cold, a deep, subterranean cold, like air from a tomb. It smelled of rot and something anciently, terribly wrong. I didn't scream. I couldn't. We stayed like that for a second that stretched into an eternity. Its empty gaze locked on mine. Then, it pulled back, straight into its full, terrifying height, and just faded into the shadows. That brings me to tonight, Christmas Eve. The stockings are hung by the chimney, presents are under the tree, its lights blinking cheerfully in the dark. Leo is tucked snugly in his bed, dreaming of the joy the morning will bring. He is safe. He is happy. That is the only thing, the only sliver of light I have left. He's dreaming of sugar plums while I'm forced to live his nightmare. My husband is asleep upstairs. I can't be in that room. Not tonight. I came downstairs, telling myself I had to wrap a few last-minute gifts. But I can't. I can only sit here and type. Because I know it's here, in the house. The feeling is stronger than it has ever been. It's not waiting for me to fall asleep anymore. An hour ago, I heard the floorboards in my bedroom creak. A slow, heavy groan. Then, a few minutes later, a footstep on the top stair, and another. It's coming down. It's not trying to be quiet anymore. There's a scratching sound. It's coming from the hallway just outside the living room. A low, patient sound. The sound of long nails dragging against the door frame. It knows I'm in here. It's waiting. I don't know what it wants. I don't know what will happen when it finally comes in. But I know one thing with a certainty that chills me to my soul. I know it's not Santa. Hi everyone, thanks for listening. That story was written by me. If you enjoyed the chaos, hit subscribe, like, and maybe join the membership so you can say I was here before she got weirdly famous. And also have a story written about you if you stay for 3 months, which would be a pretty cool thing to tell your friends, right? Yes, it would, don't lie. A massive shout out to my members. Or rather, member, Mark Mathern 7322. If you really, really enjoyed it, think I have that super thanks button down there somewhere. Even £1 helps me toward my goal of making this a full-time thing. Then I can just have one full-time thing instead of my day job and this full-time. I'm here a lot. Good night.